Good morning, and we are finally on to these lean-tos, so getting these laid out, the holes, so we can get them dug today. And the biggest thing is getting a nice parallel line with our existing building. Once we've got that established, we can get perpendicular lines to make sure that the faces of this lean-to are running perfectly in line with the face of our main structure. So I want to use the layout station, but I'm not quite sure how I make that work without a ton of trial and error, putting it in a spot, moving it, checking it. And I think that's because what I really want to do is come off of this corner with the layout station to define this line. But what I'd have to do is I would have to, maybe get a reference line off the front of this building, which would give me a point out here that I'd then have to measure off, so let's say a foot, to find this corner. And I just don't know if it's all worth it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm just going to use the old method of pulling a tape measure off of this corner to get a parallel line, and then I'm going to pull a diagonal from the two corners to double check it to be square to the main structure. Once I got our dimensional lines marked, then I'm just going to take the level. I always use my crappy Stanley because really all I'm doing is using this to get a spacing off of my string line. That way I know that my hole is going to be lined up somewhat, and I don't want to get my nice stabila levels full of paint. And then I put my paint right on the other side. I kind of make sure that it's somewhat center of the hole, not center of the string. I don't want the string to be the center of my hole. I want it to be offset. That way when my bracket goes on here, which is 5.5 inches, it's going to be in the center, not on the edge, if that makes sense. There we go. I've got the X's on the ground. Got the string line moved out of the way. The goal is for these to be as straight as possible. Obviously, they always are as straight as possible, but sometimes grade will knock you one way or the other if there's some tree limbs, stuff like that. And I'm assuming in this location, we're going to see some potential roots. So the real big thing is we want the tops of our tubes to look real nice because they're going to be somewhat exposed in this lean-to. One thing you're going to notice here when I pull my auger out is that it is filled with like 100% sand. I know we talked about it kind of at the beginning of the series, but definitely when you're digging into it, it's very unique. You would think that it's really nice to dig in such an easy material, but it actually adds some difficulty because tree roots, rocks, anything debris-wise that's hard in that hole as you're digging down, it'll push your auger almost effortless into another direction. So it really makes it difficult. We got to take our time, but you won't hear me complaining. I'd much rather dig in some sandy soils as opposed to the Duress to Dream shop. If you guys kind of remember that build, that was miserable. Now, because I had the guys doing some other stuff, I was over here by myself. I went ahead and just dug all the holes. Typically, we're going to throw all of that material back in the hole as we go and then dig it out. That just makes it easier to clean up around the holes. But because our elevation was a lot lower than the final, As you can see here, as I'm setting these tubes, I left all that material kind of around the hole so that when I put the tube in and got it to the correct height, I could just kind of backfill along it, and that friction is what holds those tubes in place. All right, got the tubes in, set at a good elevation, which means it's now time to bring in the concrete truck. You guys have seen it before. We're just pouring like a 6-bag mix. And once we get that concrete poured, we make sure we pour it dry so that we can set our brackets almost instantly. Too wet and they'll sink right into the concrete.
I'm trying on that one.
Okay, burning a foot.
Let me get on you.
Burn a foot.
Burn a foot.
10, 10 and a half. Okay, so the reason that I've only leveled up this plane is because these ears have a slight bow out. All I'm really worried about is hitting the center of the bracket to the center line on my post layout, making sure that the bracket is plumb in and out. You're on the string line there, Grego. You know I've shown how we set these brackets pretty easy. You can see here Greg's just whipping them out real quick. But I thought I'd show a little bit more in depth on how those tubes are set and the work that goes into that. Now I use the Sonotube name generically, but these are really just coil inserts from inside metal coil, and they're 20 inches. So what we're doing here is cutting them in half. We compress them, which they then want to come back open, and that keeps friction down in the hole. We screw them together so that the concrete won't blow out, and then it's just as simple as, you know, putting the laser on the top, finding our grade, getting them exactly where we want them, leveling them up, and backfilling them. Then the top is formed up nice, and it's a little bit smaller than the bottom. You know, these holes are probably 4.5 foot deep, plus the amount of concrete that's coming up, and the grade will all be brought to the top of those tubes in the end. So you don't have to really worry about them breaking off. They're not going anywhere.
5/15, quarter, 16, 8, 16. Yeah. That's a good one.
We have all of our piers dug, and while we're waiting for the concrete truck, we're gonna go ahead and set all the brackets on this office wall, which is a 20 by 20 office, and that will also be the front defining line on this lean-to. So 20-foot lean-to. We've got here on this section, we've got the sturdy wall, Midwest Permacolumn 63 OT. So these are the 3-ply 2x6 Ohio Timberland brackets, and we'll come through, put our tap cons in, and then come back through with our Simpson anchors. The corner posts get a half bracket. Pretty simple. drive, dude. Just concrete. We need to slow this thing down. I think it was going really freaking fast there. Well, I know how to lock it. That was just, it came really fast for some reason.
Let me show you something real quick. Look, when you need to hold it.
Yeah, we know that trick. That was a lot faster than, I slowed it down, I think, so. Woo! All right, best boots ever.
It's alright, dude. You'll be okay.
Actually, I just kind of exaggerated that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're overly dramatic.
Do I like it?
Good?
Yep.
Getting going this morning here on the office, and typically we're going to build these walls on the ground, stand them up. It just didn't make a ton of sense with what we had going here, so we went ahead, we stood up the columns, got them leveled up in the brackets and lagged in. We won't put our bolts in though until we get the trusses up and everything squared up and plumb where we like it. And the other thing that happened today is customer, and I should have thought this, I should have seen it, but I just oversaw it, man. There's so many things going on all the time, and I guess that's part of the making mistakes. But this column that we had in the ground, this concrete pier, is now gone because this door, this was kind of an afterthought door. I know I've said that before, but I still should have thought about it. This column was basically about a foot or two into this jam, which meant it was going to be awkward getting a truck. This was going to be more for lawn mowers, you know, four-wheelers, stuff like that. But customer was thinking it'd be good to put a truck in here also. So that just would have been really awkward. So we went ahead and got rid of it. I got my engineer working on what size header we need to span this full 20 foot. So it's just a 20-foot lean-to. It's not a monster building. We've done bigger openings, so just waiting to hear back from him. So while we're waiting, we're gonna go ahead and get this office framed up. And I'm also making up these columns also so we can get those stood. And then I got a lot of work to do on the trusses before we can put those up. Now, it is always easier to work on the ground. If you guys haven't learned that by now, I can't stress it enough. So what we're doing is we're marking all of our purlin locations. We're putting all of our bracket hangers on there so the purlins can set in them up in the air versus doing it while you're up there trying to hold everything. It's a lot easier here. Let gravity keep it in its place. And we're using this cordless Fasco joist nail hanger. Pretty cool. We're giving it a try. It's kind of runs off gas like a Paz load, but it's made by Fasco, and that's the maker of my jumbo nail gun. So once we get all of the brackets in place, we'll flip it over, we'll do the other side, and then we'll go ahead and take it up on the building. First time on site here with the Milwaukee 12-0 batteries. This came with either the grinder or the Sawzall, I don't remember, but putting it to good use because all of these 2x6s here, these are all going to be purlins. They're all going to be drop set purlins, so they're not going to run on top of our trusses like the rest of this building. They're actually going to, on our porch lean-tos, they're going to be set in flush with the top of the truss. So we've got to cut them all down to fit exactly in between. Now what we've done is we've got a little cordless. This is the 10-inch miter saw from Milwaukee. Got a nice little jig, very archaic but very useful. Don't have to pull the tape measure out but a couple times just to double check, make sure they're running where they should. Cordless power. Cordless power has come a long way. It really is quite amazing to see how far cordless power has come in just the last few years. I remember the first time, ooh, that's bright. I remember the first time I got a cordless drill and we were changing batteries just about every 10 feet on a roof. Now we'll go like the whole day with one set. I didn't have the camera rolling, of course, forgot, got excited. We went ahead and just stood this first truss up by hand. It was a little bit tricky. Thankfully we had the machinery. Got it connected. You can now see kind of there's about a 10-inch gap here that's going to have sidewall steel, so it'll be the light brown up there and underneath the ceiling. It's going to be a little tricky there. Probably should do a little work before we put these trusses in the roof on, so I'm glad I just thought of that. Maybe you should make it a lot easier. So we're up here prepping for these mono trusses. We've got our trusses are going to get put right up against this 2x4, and really this is more of an aid. We have a notch on our truss that's going to sit right on this 2x4 ledger, and it's going to overhang it 2 inches. And the reason we're doing that, I'll show you later when we do the ceiling. How about that house wrap logo? Nice job, Kimberly Clark. Anyway, so our trusses will get fastened into this ledger here that is also got some structural GRKs into the main frame of the building. And now what we're going to do is we're going to snap our line for this. It's like a sidewall flashing. It's pitch brake. Basically, this is what's going to go up the wall over the roof on the lean-to. And we got to snap a line. There's only, actually, if you look right here, this is where the bottom of our steel is going to be. So we've only got 8 inches of steel separating the roof to the soffit. And I don't know about you, but working underneath a 2-foot soffit on a 3-pitched brown roof in the middle of summer does not sound like a lot of fun. So we're going to try and do this section with our flashing before we ever put our trusses up. That way we don't have to work up underneath here. Man, we are working hard on these trusses where it's one of those things we could go and get the boom, but it's just not gonna make a whole lot of sense at this point. We've got half of them done on this wall, the other half to go, and then we'll come back and we'll drop set our purlins in here. And you can see now how this trim, just about 1 inch is what I was after on this separation here between the truss and the trim. So when we put our steel, is going to slide right up in there perfectly, and then we'll put a closure on that steel so that no wind-driven snow or wind gets up in there. And then there'll be the light brown will go up here, and that'll kind of be the separation. I know I'm going to get the question, why didn't you just make these lean-tos and the main roof all the same? So why didn't this roof just continue down? I really don't like that look. I really would rather always have a little bit of a separation, and it's more of an aesthetic thing. It's all about, from the front of the building, I want it to look good. And if it's all one roof line going both ways, I just think it looks less thought out, more like, hey, this is generic, we're just here to whip out this big building. By dropping it down, by adding a little bit of dimension, I think it just breaks it up, and I think in the end everybody's gonna like it more. It is a lot more work, but that's okay. Getting these trusses up here on the lean-to, we've got our ledger board, we've got a notch, we'll also put a hanger here, and then we've got all of our hangers. This is a 10-foot space. Typically we're going to do 8-foot space with purlins on top. You guys always see our 2x4s on edge. Well, because of the spacing of the post way over there on the lean-to, we stuck with a 10-foot bay. These trusses are engineered for 10 foot. We went with a 2x6 purlin, and we're dropping them in hangers on the truss. So not my favorite way of doing it. It's easy for your trusses to grow or shrink because it's really hard to get these gaps and everything perfect. So there can be, differences in the nominal width of the truss lumber, sometimes 1.5 inches, sometimes a 32nd either way, and that will compound as you make your way down the other end. So we got to be careful, got to make sure we get this first one straight and keep going. This morning what our job is, going to be, we'll be making a header that'll span this 20 foot. There used to be a column here. Customer decided it would be a lot easier to access this door, which I completely agree. I kind of overlooked it. So talked to my engineer. We got to double up 2 14-inch LVLs, Versalams, and figured that was a good time to bust out this new Milwaukee saw. They sent me this to kind of give a try. Obviously they want promotion, they want marketing, and I guess I'm gonna use a tool anyway. So new 12-volt battery. By the time this video airs, it'll probably not be as new, but over there is this 6.5 that I personally love. Like, I use that one all the time. It's a blade left, and it's just nice for me. It feels good. This is a blade right, so it's a little bit awkward, but I have demoed this when, if you guys go back and look at the videos, NPS 2018, when they announced this saw, I was able to demo it. It's pretty impressive. It's got a lot of power. Get it on site and really use it and see if it's any good. I wish I had their other blades, because these stock blades are usually garbage. Man, a router would have been a lot easier. LVL is not as easy as regular 2x3. Now, I'm sure there's some questions as to what I'm doing. I'm trying to clean the face of this LVL off, because I wanted it at an 1.5-inch dimension versus 5/8 to 3/4, which would they come. That way when I fasten it to my post, that little extra dimension is burnt on the inside of my column. That way I can maintain an 1.5-inch spacing from the column face. Yeah, I think that'll work. Well, there we go. We got the LVL up. It's a 2-ply 14-inch LVL. We're gonna have to cut this off, but just honestly left it until our lift is in a better position to cut it off. So that's gonna have one truss sitting right in the middle of it. We'll put a hanger there and support it, and then also we'll hanger this one. But I'd love to get this framing wrapped up, get everything plumbed up, get all these columns plumbed up where they're supposed to be, and that should happen. We've got this wall section over here plumbed up, so it should continue on as we go if we did our job. LVL in place. We'll swap out that hanger with a bigger one. I just didn't have one on me, but yeah, should be good. So we're here on the last bay of purlins, which are, you can see here, they're drop set, so they've been dropped in so that they're flush on the top of our truss. Makes for a pain, but what happens is we're setting these purlins in, and there's going to be hangers on all these. We just ran out of hanger nails a couple trusses back, so we've just temporarily screwed them in with some GRKs, and you know, they're not going anywhere right now. I'll get some hanger nails tonight. Maybe I'll stop at the lumberyard or something. But what happens is as we're putting these in, the dimension will slowly grow or it will get smaller, and that's usually because this is a pretty good truss, but we'll get some cupping on the board, so our dimensional lumber that we have cut to an exact dimension sometimes does not, you know, if there's a gap here, it can grow. So instead of this being figured at an 1.5 inches, maybe the gap makes it 1 5/8 inches. So what we do is way on the other end, we put a string line and we straightened that end. We plumbed up the corner, so we know we're good here. Kind of, you do your best through here, and then what you do at the very end is we put another string line, and then we measured every purlin so that we can end with a nice straight line. But this truss here, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's not perfect. So we're gonna take a little bit extra time to run that. Got the Stabila 180 out again. What we've got here is we've cut our first tail on our truss to where we want it for our overhang. And because we've added these trusses onto our existing building, even though we straightened this building with the LA 180 laser, there's always inconsistencies in your posts. These posts are not perfect, okay? They're not perfectly plumbed. They are really good. So when we attach these trusses that are all cut to fit, there might be, you know, 1/8 inch or so here or there. Well, in order to get a nice facial line on this, we're gonna use the 180. Look at this. It's automatically searching for the receiver way down there, 80 feet away. It just found it. So it's getting locked on right now. This is amazing. It's just slowly moving. All right, he's locked. Now that the laser's set up, we can take the receiver. I'm gonna make sure it's level. So there's my new line. You know, it's another little tip and trick right there. If you're cutting something that's, you know, got weight on it, or, you know, if this board's a lot longer, always cut top down. If you cut from the bottom up, it will pinch your blade. So always come from the top. We've had a pretty long week. We've been working on these lean-tos. We had to dig all the holes, set the concrete, make up all of our posts, get them all built. So we've been kind of fiddle-farting around. That's the official term. So we've had our insulators in. That's an R19 fiberglass. They couldn't really do what they wanted to, so their equipment they had was not sufficient with this gravel pad. So they're gonna come back. My customer's an excavator, so he's going to, we just got a couple loads of rock delivered. He's gonna bring it in here, level it out the best he can. And then I told him they could use my mega deck. That'll really speed up things and they can get this thing insulated probably in just a few hours. Probably a little bit hard to see, but after using the layout station, we were able to get our tails cut pretty much perfect. It's looking pretty good. We got maybe a couple ins and outs in between the 10-foot bays. That'll all come out with the roof. We got our 20-foot opening. We took that post out, got the LVLs. That was an engineered fix, so I feel good about that. Got to get some hanger nails to finish up the hangers on these purlins, drop purlins. I really don't like them. I would way rather go over top. It's more efficient. I think it's stronger. It's more accurate on your dimensions, but this is going to start coming together next week, I think. But if you want to see, you're going to have to make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. And I greatly appreciate it. Smash on that thumbs up, as Peter McKinnon would say. If you don't know him, go check him out. And if you would drop me a comment down below if you've got questions, it's the best place for me to kind of answer them and have a discussion for everybody to follow along with. But we'll catch you on the next video. Make sure you're watching Tools Day. Appreciate all the support, guys. Have a good one.